Hello, I'm Joy Mower. I'm the module lead for a module called Exploring Curriculum and Pedagogy. This module is focused on helping student teachers right at the beginning of their training and their degree in developing subject knowledge in a number of subjects. Initially, they just do 4 subjects, one of which is always maths and one's English and some other subjects. We ask them to think about big questions, and we introduce them to the concept of epistemic insight. We give them some questions to choose from, and we think about this in terms of the children that they will be working with, so the age range, and this is primary education. So what they do is they choose a big question and then they look at that through a number of different subjects. And we think this is really useful for helping them to understand the importance of good subject knowledge in each of the disciplines, to think about how those different subjects can fit together, but also can give us different understanding of the same question. And it also introduces the students who are very early in their academic career to the concept of looking at something through a number of different lenses. So they're looking through the lenses of the subjects, which and at a primary education level, but later on they will be developing their understanding of using more theoretical lenses as well. So they're not only looking at epistemic insight and big questions, but we're also getting them to think about the way in which we ask questions about the world. So I've got Molly Reynolds here, who is one of our part-time primary education students, and she's going to talk about the way in which she approached this task.
As Joy said, I'm currently on the part-time course at Level 4, and I'm also working in a primary school in Essex from years 1 to 3. And I felt that this task was really useful for helping us to develop our understanding, like Joy said, of these big questions and the impact that they have on our lives, and also how we approach this in a pedagogical stance and teaching it to children. It was really, really useful.
So what did you think the main aim and purpose of the activity was for you?
So personally, prior to the task, I didn't have a great understanding of what epistemic insight was and how we should go about questioning, I think, these big questions that we have throughout our lives. So from sort of having this task, and I feel like one of the main purposes was being able to gain a greater insight and how we can apply them in a classroom setting as well, and also in our own lives to think about different kinds of questioning.
And when you did the task, what sort of processes were involved in your thinking to help you address the task to do that effectively? Because you did it really nicely, I have to say.
Thank you. So the question that I chose to approach was basically how the seasons can affect us. So I broke this down into several different sections that I felt would be appropriate. So I think one of them was how seasons can affect us personally, in terms of our bodies and our mental health, and then business and tourism. So it's just breaking it down into topic areas to then really pinpoint what questions I needed to be asking specifically and thinking about it on a much deeper level instead of just the surface idea of, I suppose, if it's cold, we're cold, and if it's hot, we're hot. So just breaking it down and really thinking sort of deeper into it through the research that I was looking at and reading. So as you can see here, this was the outcome that I produced after considering the question of how do seasons affect us. So I've broken it down into the 4 main areas which I felt were most appropriate. So the effects of travel and leisure, the effects on food and farming, so agriculture, and how it affects our bodies and our mental health, and also, of course, the effects that seasons have on local environments.
So in doing the task, obviously there was an outcome, as I've already said. You made a really lovely presentation, and we talked about that at the time. We had a session where all the students talked through their presentations, and you did that really well. But in terms of the bigger kind of idea of an outcome for you, in terms of your learning, doing this task and working in this way, what did you see as the benefits and possibly limitations as well of working in it, taking this particular approach?
So personally, I think I found that it was quite difficult at times when looking at this question to find ways that I could specifically link it to primary curriculum without overcomplicating matters for children of these ages. Sometimes I was looking at readings and thinking, wow, this is great, but actually would this approach be suited to children, say from 5 to 11? So that was one of the limitations I think I found sometimes with the readings, making sure that I could adapt it to a primary level. But also I think for future practice and being able to make sure that I had a better understanding of how easy it is as well to actually teach things cross-curricularly. So I found that in terms of the benefits, through looking definitely at tourism and business, I found in terms of curriculum that I was able to link this in my teaching definitely to geography, obviously, but also to maths and thinking about maths across the curriculum.
So what is your understanding of epistemic insight, and has it had any influence on the way you think about your practice in future?
I think now looking further into it, it's more kind of just not accepting what we know and what we've been taught about all the moral and social issues that we're faced with throughout life, but not only us as adults, but I think to also implement throughout children our teaching as well, to make sure that we're challenging these issues and these big questions, because it's really made me realise that actually and especially when going back to work after lockdown and everything, children only know what they're told unless we teach them to challenge things and to question. So I think it's really important now moving forwards that I not only suggest to children to challenge ideas, but encourage them to as well, and make these meaningful connections through what they're learning as well in the reality of life around them. I think particularly with the age group that I'm working with, when I'm working with sort of younger children throughout Key Stage 1 to Year 3, to make sure that as they develop into young adulthood and adolescence, that they're not then feeling panicked about the world around them and not knowing how to question things if we introduce it at a younger stage.
Thank you, Molly, very much for your input on this and for the presentation you did. Thank you.
No worries at all. Thank you, Joy.